All right, here we go. First live stream. Hello, YouTube. Hello, listeners. Hello, internet people. This is going to be a update on various exciting projects going on, a little bit about Sense Space, but mostly about the Dialogos and Fellowship journey that's going to be coming up on April 22nd next month. Those of you listening who are eager to register, I would recommend sort of doing that in the next week, but you'll have about the next 2 weeks to sign up for a spot in this experience. So what is Dialogos? I'm guessing some of you listening to this will already have a sense of what Dialogos is, others perhaps a bit less familiar. What I like to call it and what I practice with people is what I call transformative dialogue. Transformative means we shift state during the course of the dialogue. And Dialogos is perhaps the kind of philosophical, mystical consummation of that process. It's a mysterious experience. It's sort of something at the heart of what we call emerging collective intelligence. It's characterized by a sense of a kind of wisdom flow moving through you. Critically, not just you, but you in relationship with others, you in a dialogue, whether it's one-to-one, just something that has been incredibly powerful for me, but also in groups. And that's what I've been working with over the last year and a half, 2 years, when I first started getting involved in men's groups, and then eventually ended up facilitating a men's group, which was called Connection, Creativity, and Integration. And I was already quite deep into Dialogos at that time. For those of you who know a bit of my story, I was kind of in a big life transition, aka deep in depression and trauma integration and existential crisis around January 2020. And it was right at this time that Dialogos really started popping off in the dialogues of John Viveki, Chris, Jordan Hall, and Guy, many of whom you may know, but all of them have been really pioneers in rebirthing a kind of living wisdom tradition. I would say it's not philosophy in the books, it's philosophy as living energy, though of course each of those guys are scholars in their own right, and they drew a lot of things into it, but they really showed something that you didn't need to be a studied philosopher. You certainly didn't need to know Greek to experience this energy and this possibility in a group. And that's ultimately what captivated me, what drew me in when I was incredibly depressed and dropping in and out of states of real struggle. Watching these dialogues seemed to me to be a frequency, a channel, a broadcast of meaningfulness, of insight that was not found anywhere else. And so that's kind of what started off my journey, started Sense Space, March 2020, after a conversation with Jordan Hall. And it's really been a journey from there of dialogue with a lot of incredible people, of getting involved in this men's work and starting my own practice and really bringing through my understanding of Dialogos into practice with people, continually working at the edge of myself and with others to transform energies, to come into new understandings with people, to really go in a intuitive, perhaps Socratic fashion with questions, and really allowing the dialogue to unfold and almost follow its own directionality, its own telos, um, and therefore to get somewhere unexpected, somewhere that I couldn't myself know, that the other person couldn't know. And this is part of the magic of Dialogos. And so, yeah, where do we go in the story here? So Men Emerging ran last year, the Men Emerging initiative, which was kind of bringing together a really exciting group of men in this emergent, sense-making, sovereignty-seeking space. Men around the world, men of quite different ages and backgrounds, in America, Europe, China, Australia. And what I was doing there was seeking to sort of bring together a traditional men's circle, which is where men of different backgrounds come together and speak in a sort of authentic inquiry, and gain a deeper understanding of themselves, and perhaps get to show up in a different way than they are currently showing up in other areas of their life. So an immensely valuable thing for our culture, for our time. Men's initiation is, I believe, really important. But what I was also doing was exploring Dialogos in a group practice context. How can we um, induce this possibility space in dialogue? What kind of curriculum? What kind of focus points? How do we structure the dialogue in such a way that really creates a fruit-bearing container? And so that was an incredibly insightful experience. And out of that, I developed the Dialogos and Fellowship curricula, conversational curricula. This, of course, is a really emergent process. And insofar as I, as the facilitator, the guide, would know precisely what's going to happen, would undermine the rich potential that lies in this practice and experience. So it is going to be unexpected. However, I have drawn together a lot of elements that I see as quite crucial to an understanding of Dialogos, a felt sense of Dialogos. This is not a theoretical program. It's a deeply experiential process, and those are the aspects of Dialogos that we're going to really be drawing out. So we start off with a sort of key foundation of Dialogos. I call it the Tai Chi of Dialogue. And so this is coming into a sort of new, present, slow, thoughtful movement, coming into relationship with the breath, coming into a deeper listening in the expanded sense. Some of you read my article about the Tai Chi of listening to breath, body, listening to the field. And that sort of brings us into what we'll be doing in the second week, which is exploring the field of dialogue. This is a really important dimension to collective intelligence, to circling, to we space kind of modalities, is this awareness of there is me and there's you, and then there is this space. And in my Dialogos practice, we really learn to relate to that space, become aware of it, perhaps to speak it into being, to begin to speak from it. And with that, we can begin to be held by something. So this is partly why Dialogos and Fellowship is an 8-session fortnightly journey. Because I think there is something unique that can happen when we sort of build this practice into our life through the course of a season rather than just doing a weekend intensive, which a lot of people have really enjoyed. Guy and John doing the weekend intensives. This is a different structure. This is a seasonal arc, and it's sort of instantiated into your life each fortnight. And through that time, we actually are cultivating a space, and that space is sort of made up of all of our contributions, but it eventually can take on a field of wisdom that sort of lives beyond each of the individuals in the space. And I've had this with previous containers, um, where we go on this incredible journey and we work out the rough edges and the conflicts, and we go through this learning process to actually harmonize together really skillfully and elegantly in a way where new understandings are emerging. And in that space, there's also a kind of spirit of fellowship beginning to develop between the participants. And that's super nourishing to be able to participate in as well. That's perhaps one of the main reasons that I love doing these men's groups and so on. But with that return, we have a sense of like returning into that space, into that sort of collective mind, into that collective field. And as the field is cultivated, as we go through these dialogues, it grows more palpable. And I had a really interesting experience reconvening a men's group from, I think it wrapped up in summer 2021. We reconvened a few weeks back, and it was so amazing to see us drop right back into that field of relationship and awareness, and it sort of drew us out in a particular way, and it was really touching and insightful. So from there, we move into flow, which is also a very just meaningful, enlivening experience to have. It's one of the critical elements of Dialogos is moving into a space of flow in which thought and body and kind of movement within ourselves that is not overly conscious, where we can sort of move with one another without having to think too much, and often actually moving into a place where we don't know what's going to happen next, and speaking from that place, speaking from not knowing. And with that, we can begin to speak things that we haven't spoken before. And often there's a sense that the sort of resonance, the resonant field of the space of dialogue, when it's cultivated, when it's cared for, it allows us to speak better, more well. We find ourselves articulating, understanding, and speaking with a kind of wholeness into these group spaces that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And with that, we'll be moving into some really emergent terrain. Each session is actually going to be fairly emergent, but there's a curricula for sessions 1 to 3 and sessions 5 to 8. And this is really sort of guiding milestones that are going to take us on a journey through the different dimensions of this transformative dialogue process. So later on, we're going to go into not knowing. We're going to go into the mystery of dialogue. We're going to talk about and begin to exhibit the spirit of fellowship. And we're going to conclude in an area that is really at the edge of my own understanding of Dialogos. It's the horizon of dialogue. It's the place beyond dialogue that seems to be pulling our dialogues in a certain direction. It seems to be acting upon our dialogues. I've been in the process of trying to understand the full meaning of Dialogos for culture, the meaning of Dialogos for this time. What is this emergence of a new kind of consciousness between people? And what does it mean for us to be able to alchemize and open these spaces where things can be slowed down and moved in a different way and understood in a different way, and different understandings can sort of intermesh, and people can come into their personhood in a new way. Like, what is that phenomenon? What does it mean? And where is it going? And I've been reading some incredibly interesting philosophers on this, some pretty out there ones, to be honest. Terence McKenna has been a big influence on me, and I've been really interested to see how his understandings connected with Dialogos, but also Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who I came across by way of Zach Stein in his paper on the apocalypse of the modern world system. And so you can check out my dialogue with Zach if you're interested in more of that. But I'm going to be drawing in some of those ideas. And also I'm really interested to draw in your ideas of like, what is the full potentiality of this? Where is it taking us? What does it mean for this time? Who are we becoming through it? And so that is sort of the roadmap of Dialogos and fellowship. And I will stress that the map is not the territory, nor can it be, because you guys are going to be a part of this living organism that I'm helping to create, helping to midwife. It's incomplete as of yet. All my role has been is to sort of create an elegant vision for what it might be, and to invite a space that is well held, that is structured. Perhaps I'll speak just a little bit to what that structure is. As I said, this is not a philosophical seminar. You're going to be bringing in you'll be bringing in your lived context as well, and that's part of what the richness of the dialogue draws upon, is your life and your world. So we begin usually with a checking in process somewhere at the outset, so you have some time to be like making sense of where you're at, what's going on, and so forth. And from there is the dropping in process. I developed a sort of intuitive meditative process that I often do in my practice, and I do with groups, and people found it incredibly helpful. And so that's kind of tailored to where we are in that moment, and also like where are we trying to go that week? Are we trying to come into a listening, an embodiment, a sense of the space around us, and so on? So checking in, dropping in, then I will give some presentational spiel and embodiment of what are we inquiring into, and sort of bringing my curiosity about that and laying some foundation for you guys. And then it's going to move into emergent dialogue, and we're going to move around, and each of us sort of contribute in shaping, creating, transforming what is this dialogue. And during the course of that, I will also be paying care to how are we conducting the dialogue, and how are we holding the dialogue, and sort of bring that meta conversational awareness to the quality of the space, as well as the subject of the dialogue. So that's sort of the structure of the sessions. What more is there to add at this point? I think this was a good initial layout of what's going to be happening in Menomed, Dialogos and Fellowship, starting April 22nd. I will include a link to it in the description to this video. It's just jacobkishere.com, Kishere. And then on my website, you'll find Dialogos and Fellowship. Those of you who are interested in meta-merging, there will be another meta-merging initiative coming up probably a month or 6 weeks after Dialogos and Fellowship begins. I don't know precisely when yet, but probably around end of May, start of June. So you can bookmark that in the back of your heads as well. But I would welcome your questions. And I'm really excited to delve into this with you guys and create a really unique experience. It is going to be unlike any other Dialogos course, certainly any other conventional kind of course. This is going to be much more deeply participatory and co-creative journey, and perhaps will lead to some new friendships and relationships and kind of fellowship being formed within the group, as well, as so often occurs when people are sort of synergetically drawn together to this strange attractor that we call Dialogos. So with that, I'm going to wrap up today's stream, but I do hope to speak a little bit more on this in the coming days. And thank you guys.